Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's stream. It is the most wonderful time of the year because Advent of Code has begun. And I'm gonna be very honest with you, it's quite literally what gets me out of bed each. You barely like getting up at 6 and like being right there immediately working on a coding problem. In any other month, I'll be very honest with you. If you are in the chat or if you're watching either on YouTube or I've also been told we're also live on Twitch, make sure you say hello in the chat. Maybe say where you're from, and let us know how you felt about today's challenge. I have to say, I'm really excited about this year of Advent of Code because we will be doing 12 streams again this year, and I'm really delighted about the lineup of people that we have. I don't want to spoil everything yet, but I think we're going to see a very diverse crowd of people with really cool approaches to solving these kind of problems, and I think we'll see a lot of really interesting perspectives. It's so nice seeing all of you already check in here. I already see someone here saying they're using Kotlin notebooks. That's awesome. There's other people coming in here. It's a lot of people from all over the world: Brazil, Bangladesh, the United States, Cyprus, Berlin. Really delightful. Thank you so much that you choose to spend your evening, your afternoon, your morning, whatever time it may be, with us. And of course, with Advent of Code. So we have a bunch of housekeeping to get through, but before we want to do this, I also want to briefly introduce you to today's guest who will join us for all the fun problem solving that we'll do over the next hour or so. You may have seen him before if you were a part of any of the previous Advent of Code events that we've put on so far, or maybe if you've just done any Advent of Code, because I would describe him by now as an integral part of the AOC experience when you're doing it in Kotlin. So I'm going to welcome Todd Ginsburg to the show. Hey, Todd.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm truly excellent. It is. I can't believe it's already been a year.
I know. This year just flew by.
Yeah, but it's just a good time being back here. I have to say I didn't realize how much I missed. At least for me, it's always there's the cold outside, and then you get like the radiator giving off like the warmth, and that's kind of what signals to me. I'm like, oh, like quite literally, I'm like, oh, Advent of Code time is like rolling around again.
No, I love this time of year. I like especially the Advent of Code, obviously, but it's nice to have a little change in seasons and get a little chilly for a little while at least. Anyway, I'm sure in 4 months we'll all be tired of it. But no, Advent of Code is. No, I look forward to this every year. So December 1st is always a good day because it starts, and have a bunch of friends that we all talk about the solutions and what each other did, and it's always pretty entertaining time. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I'm going to briefly welcome our folks, and then I also want to briefly talk about what you've done with AOC before, and then we'll get into today's challenge. So just briefly, as you may have known, just like last year, we are doing an Advent of Code kind of campaign around all of this. And of course, what might be interesting in you, besides learning more about Kotlin, learning more about the Kotlin ecosystem, learning more about your IDE, is of course that you can win a couple of prizes during this campaign as well. There's a blog post about this on the JetBrains blog, so you can check this one out, and it contains all the information. First of all, we are doing live streams 12 times. They will be roughly at 5 p.m. UTC every day, but things will be switching around a little bit on a couple of days. on one of those days because I really want to go to our Christmas party. On a couple of other days because we also have other like live streams happening and cool announcements going out. So we're obviously trying to accommodate you folks so that you can watch those as well.
So is this going to be the start of a trend? Or are you going to do 14 days next year? Or are you going to try to add to it, like just keep getting closer and closer to the edge of unsolvability within an hour, and then
this is a good question, and I've been contemplating this because I've been trying to organize all 12 guests for this year, and it was already quite difficult. Where at some point I was already considering maybe if I'll just add 2 or 3 days, the whole puzzle of trying to fit everyone into one of the days.
The thing is, it's like all the like people like me on day one. I mean, if you're on day 12, that's a gamble. Like, those are hard puzzles at day 12. They start ramping up. I was like, you said you want to participate on day 1, and I was like, yes, absolutely on day 1.
But I've had people reach out to me and they were like, well, day 5 seems a little like maybe you can schedule me for something a little later. Like I feel like flex my
7
muscles.
And before is like the sweet spot, and once you get beyond 7, it's like that's some real skill, right, to do it. And because I mean, for me, it's like I've got a couple hours before the stream because the way the puzzle works out. So anyway, you can go on with your thing. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. But yes, as you can probably tell, there's a roughly 12 hours between when the challenge unlocks and then when we talk about it, which gives us time to solve it. And most importantly, it gives you time to solve it on your own. And also already talk to your fellow Kotlin developers about it, whether that's in your company, whether that's your friends or in a Discord that you've joined, or of course also in the official Kotlin Lang Slack.
There's a real active community there.
There really is.
There's some really fun people there.
Could just casually drag this over here for a second, and you'll see that there is also an ad for this very video in here, or this very live stream. So make sure you check that out and you stop by there. We do also have a couple of leaderboards, so that allows you to submit your stuff, and you can kind of compare yourself to other Kotlin developers, which is always a great time. Funnily enough, we have had so many people interested in joining that we quickly filled out the first couple of leaderboards already. So please make sure that you only join one leaderboard, otherwise we're just running out of space rather quickly. We did ask the Advent of Code organizers if we could have a bigger leaderboard, but that's apparently not in the cards just yet. I still remain hopeful.
Are these new leaderboards?
These are new leaderboards from last year, because otherwise those would have already been filled.
Good to know.
They filled up so quickly that by the time I tried to join the first one, I couldn't. So there is an official leaderboard that I am not a part of. I'm very sorry. It means you probably won't see your name on stream if you're on the first leaderboard. I apologize. We have a question here, which is how do you join the leaderboard? So you grab one of those codes, and then you go to your Advent of Code. You go to leaderboards, and then you say when you see where it says you can join a private leaderboard, you click that. There's a window up here, and you can put that code in there, and then you press join. If it says the leaderboard is full, try the next one. If it says you successfully joined, please don't try another one.
You're on a lot of leaderboards. Wow.
I do have a lot of leaderboards. There's a couple of internal ones here from JetBrains. There's a couple of friends here. There's also Roman Yelizarov's leaderboard. We can take a look at that one. You can see here.
Wow.
This is where
You're
Roman
crushing
is.
him.
Yeah, look at that. Don't worry. I'm sure that lead is not gonna hold for very long.
No, I believe in you. I think you just got to get up and do this like right away in 5 minutes every day, and you can crush him.
If I had time travel, maybe. But yes, of course, the real reason for all of this is that Roman is on the road, was having a breakfast conversation, ran to the room late, spent 10 minutes setting up his dev environment, and as a reason of that, got a very bad time on the trivial day one problem, as he calls it. I'm actually curious, if you're out there, how did you feel about this one. Would you describe it as trivial? Because I'll let you in on a secret, Todd. I actually thought this one was a little bit challenging for a day one.
I thought for the day one, I mean, I thought of the day ones, this has been more challenging than others. But I wouldn't, like in the grand totality of AOC problems, I wouldn't say it was super challenging. But
sure,
for like everybody's thinking like, I'm going to wake up and crank this out in 5 seconds. It's like, oh, okay, I need some thought on part 2 anyway.
Yeah. Actually have to wake up for it.
See, these come out at midnight for me, so I can't stay up that late. That's like 3 hours past my bedtime. So I just get up and do it in the morning. And so I'm like groggy and asleep and trying to keep my dog from helping me.
That makes perfect sense. So if this is maybe your first time starting Advent of Code with Kotlin, then we do have a bunch of resources compiled also in the blog post that you can take a look at. One of the resources, if you're looking for like a project structure, is heading over to the Advent of Code in Kotlin GitHub template. And this one just kind of gives you a directory structure that you can work with. You can just hit the use this template button to set up this project. The one thing that's very important for you to note is if you do have a project and you want to like opt into being able to win a couple of nice prizes, make sure you add the topic AOC 2023 in Kotlin here. You do that by hitting this little gear icon and then just adding the tag down here. That's how you opt in, because we're not trying to. It's not only the people who submit things the fastest, because that's not what this is all about. It's all about learning. So you'll also be able to win something potentially, as long as you just submit a couple of solutions. We also have the previous year solutions available, and you can, of course, watch the previous recordings of our live streams and videos from the previous years if you want to. And there's also a blog post with a couple of tips and tricks for solving Advent of Code. There is actually 2 flavors of our template as well. There is the Advent of Code Kotlin template, and there's also one based on Amper, which is our new build tool. If you are interested in that, why don't you tune back in tomorrow? Maybe we'll see something specific around that. Could be interesting. Yes, the detailed rules for all the prizes are mentioned also in this blog post. So you can take a look there. And hopefully you're going to have a great time. Let's see here. We also have let me just see if we have a couple of interesting questions here. I'm curious how Seb's going to approach it. Last year I learned Windowed from Seb. Very nice. A lot of people say, yeah, part 2 was a little bit challenging. Part 2 was killer. Yep. So there's I think that's a trend that maybe we'll also see in a little bit of our discussion. So I think probably at this point we're warmed up enough. At least I've had half a cup of tea, and this tea was very hot. So I'm like quite literally warmed up by this point. So I think we can
get a jacket on or a hoodie or whatever. So
I also do have that hoodie on. That is true. But I gotta stay branded. It is JetBrains branded. I'm not sure if that's even visible or if that's hidden behind my microphone. But
if you don't get enough like Kotlin logos on screen during this, does your boss send you an email or something complaining about it, or what? Like,
I think
this a self-imposed standard.
No, it's a self-imposed standard. But
Okay,
also, I feel like there's always at least 2 Kotlin logos visible.
I like that neon. If you have extras lying around, you can.
Yeah, very much so. Just as a little hint. It's currently, unfortunately, off screen, and I can't really easily change my camera. But the speaker gift for this year's Kotlin Conf was a neon sign. Oh. The call for papers is still open for a couple of days, as far as I know. So if you are excited about talking about Kotlin, feel free to join. It might be an opportunity to get one of those.
Is there a Cody neon, or is it just the logo?
So this one, the one that I have here, is the Kotlin Conf logo, so the little bird in the K shape. I like that one. But who knows what will be the speaker gift for next year? We'll see. So I did realize just before we went live that I do not currently have my my Christmas hat on me. So there's going to be something.
I never would
that-
have agreed to this if I'd known the hat wasn't coming back this year.
Yeah,
man.
it might be. I think it might
Outta
be
here.
coming back. Well, just people
Just
will have
imagine
to
a hat.
tune. Yeah, people will have to tune in again tomorrow to see the hat, and I'll just keep
Okay.
doing that until day 12.
Hatless today.
So, with that out of the way, we are ready to dive in because I think I'm not sure how you approach this, Todd, but when I wake up in the morning, I don't read any of this.
No, I
Like,
don't
the
either.
way-
I
yeah, the
scroll
way
down
that-
to the bits
Yep.
that look fun and start.
You kind of scroll and you're like first digit, last digit,
Yeah.
creates a 2-digit number. You have something like that, but you miss out on all the delicious flavor text. All the what
Yeah,
we're
no,
actually
it's a
trying
good
to
story.
achieve. So I think it's time for us to take a step back here and really enjoy the lore. So we will dive in with day 1, Trebuchet. Something is wrong with global snow production, and you've been selected to take a look. The elves have even given you a map. On it, they've used stars to mark the top 50 locations that are likely to be having problems.
That's convenient.
It is.
I mean, problem's practically solved right there.
Yeah. You've been doing this long enough to know that to restore snow operations, you need to check all 50 stars by December 25th. Collect stars by solving puzzles. 2 puzzles will be made available on each day in the Advent calendar. The second puzzle is unlocked when you complete the first. Each puzzle grants 1 star. Good luck. Okay, well, we got our task set out for us. You try to ask why they can't just use a weather machine,
Not powerful enough.
and where they're even sending you,
The sky.
and why your map looks mostly blank.
You sure ask a lot of questions, Sebastian.
And hang on, did you just say the sky?
Of course. Where do you think snow comes from?
When you realize that the elves are already loading you into a trebuchet,
Please, hold still. We need to strap you in.
as they're making the final adjustments, they discover that their calibration document, your puzzle input, has been amended by a very young elf who is apparently just excited to show off her art skills. Consequently, the elves are having trouble reading the values on the document. The newly improved calibration document consists of lines of text. Each line originally contained a specific calibration value that the elves now need to recover. On each line, the calibration value can be found by combining the first digit and the last digit in that order to form a single 2-digit number. For example, we have 1 ABC2, PQR3, STU8, VWX, A1B2C3, D4 E5 F, and Treb 7 Ushe. In this example, the calibration values of these 4 lines are 12, 38, 15, and 77. Adding these together produces 142. Consider your entire calibration document. What is the sum of all of the calibration values? Okay, all right. Sounds like a good first task here, and I'm sure that part 2 is going to be.
It lulls everybody into a false sense of security.
That's right.
It's the best part about this puzzle.
False sense of security and trebuchets don't
Yeah,
mix well.
trebuchets. Those are.
So, what we're gonna do? So first of all, what was your initial thought when you looked at this problem, Todd?
Basically the same thing as you. I just skipped to the end and read this, and I came up with a solution that I actually just implemented, and it worked fine. So usually I'll implement something just to get the test. So I have 2 tests for each part of the puzzle. I have like the sample input, and then I have what mine is. So when I refactor, I can no, I didn't mess it up too badly. So I usually between those 2, getting those numbers in the test passing, I'll do a lot of refactoring just to make sure things clean up. But this one I actually just kind of went with what I started with. So
Okay, so
which is kind of rare for me for part 1. So
Cool. So let's see what that looks like. Do you just want to
gotta-
walk us through? So just for a quick context here for everyone who's watching, we're just have this project open in IntelliJ IDEA right now. It's running on my machine, but Todd is joined using code with me, so just collaborative features, so he can control things.
Oh, that's
on
weird.
my
The
machine as
collapsing
well.
doesn't work across code with me. Okay, ignore this. That's fun. I'll open all these back up so I see what it looks like on yours. Okay, so ignore all of the things that are like, ignore this map. We don't even maybe even use that, and then ignore the part 2. So part 1. So going back, the input I have a utility on my end, and I guess Sebastian, you have one too, where we take that huge file and just turn it into a list of string.
Yeah.
So when you see input, that's what that is.
That's right. For me, this utility usually just means writing out file with and then just doing .read lines. Just I do like a good convenience function.
No, that's better than mine. Mine does like a resource loader thing. Just so because I pick it out of the class path, but this makes way more sense. So this is much cleaner. Anyway, at any rate, we end up with a list of string, and that's not that exciting, but it's something that you need to know in order to follow along. So basically, part 1 is to calculate the calibration value for each row, and then sum them all up. So I'm gonna, before we go into the inner part, the sum of function over input will take each row and then call this function and then sum up all which returns an integer and then sums up all the answers. And I love using this because this is one of those fun functions in the Kotlin standard library that we can use for this. And so calibration value is down here, and ignore all of this other stuff. I'm sorry. I went just straight at it. I didn't do any looping or anything. Because the 2 digits need to be put together into a number. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can either find the first digit on the left-hand side, and then multiply. Turn the character into a digit, and then multiply it by 10, and then do the same thing with the last digit. Turn the last one into a digit. I just kind of concatenated them both into a string. So if you can see here, I'm really just using string templates to call. Basically, on the input, go find the first character that matches this condition, which is it's a digit, and then go find the last one that matches this thing, it's a digit, and then to int it. In the real world, if these strings were very, very long, I would probably have done this differently, but this is sample input, and I think the longest input on mine is like 50 characters, 58 characters, something like that. It's just not that much input. I don't feel the need to optimize this. I mean, I should just say at this point, when I write these, I try not to write code that is like hyper optimized. I'm trying to write things that I can understand. So not that it would be ununderstandable the other way, but I just it's totally a word. But no, I did that, and so it's a pretty straightforward thing. We get find the first one, find the second one, or find the last one, and then tell Kotlin to turn that string into an int, and then just sum them all up, and there you go.
I have to say I'm a huge fan of this approach. It's not the approach that I chose. Well, we can take a look at that in a moment.
Okay.
But I do just want to break this down again, because I think regardless of this being like a very neat approach, there is a lot of parentheses going on everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's worth kind of looking into here. So what we're looking at here, so at the outermost layer is we're crafting a string, right? And then we're turning that into an integer. And these two are essentially, we'll just close that one. These two parts are essentially just the first digit and the last digit. I really hope that this won't keep on popping up. So I guess in theory, if we wanted to, we could go in here, we could convert this into a block body, and we could extract like some kind of a function, a property for this. I'm very sorry, because it does feel a little. I feel like I'm overstepping a boundary here by refactoring your code, but I'm just doing this a little bit. So we can just grab this out here, and then this would be the first digit, and then hopefully you can also see that this is indeed, it's just a character, right?
Yeah.
And then we can do the same thing for the other half, which is the last digit. And And I think now, at least, I
that's at
really
least more
like
readable.
the other solution. But the shorter solution. But this one might be clearer if you're just not familiar with it.
Yeah.
And this, of course, it does just use these really nice convenience functions from the standard library with first and last. We have a question here. Doesn't row last iterate from the back anyway, making this function pretty efficient? And I think the good thing about Kotlin is you can always you can click into all these functions, right?
Indices are first. Yeah, it does.
Just command click. Cool. Yeah, it'll just reverse the indices and it'll go through those. So yeah, it just iterates from the back. Nice. Very nice. And then you just get the single number.
Yeah,
you're done.
I think that's a nice use of standard library stuff in there. I think the first and last and sum of, I think those are pretty cool.
Yeah, I love those. So my solution for this, and I'm also going to quickly fold together my part 2 here. It's pretty similar. It also has a bunch of parentheses. You can tell that I didn't even bother introducing any kind of variables either. But the overall strategy is the same, right? You find the first digit. The only difference is I first convert this to an integer, and then just like you said, I multiply the first digit by 10. That essentially just shifts it by 1 over if you look at it as a number. And then I do the same thing for the last digit and also turn that into an integer. Now, Todd, can you tell me why this function is called digit to int and not to int?
Because if you do to int, the character that it represents, you'll get its like Unicode or whatever the code that it actually represents. And if you want that, you're not supposed to call to int either. You're supposed to call code. That's code now. And this was always one of my big gripes about Kotlin, is I had to write this function every year. And I guess a few years ago, somebody added it to whoever added that to the standard library. I'm your friend. I appreciate that, because that was always something that was a gripe for me.
So yeah, if you were to try to use to int, which might be the intuitive thing, is this one is kind of it is kind of ambiguous, right? Because it conflates. Do you mean turn this like number 9 into the digit 9, or do you mean turn it into whatever ASCII code? Like, it's
one of those things that like every language has got this concept of turning a character into its like backing code, like the code that the computer uses it for, Unicode or ASCII or whatever it is. And I think this is one of those things that just kind of got carried along with, turning it into an int, that's what that means. But if you're new to programming and new to this language, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. So I'm very glad that this just keeps things easy, or keeps things explicit, let's say.
Yeah.
So now that we have seen that these are functionally equivalent, we can also just, of course, quickly run these, and we will get a result. And then if we go back to Todd's implementation, and we'll also comment out the second part, we'll see it's 55447 that is on my input, and we'll rerun this. It's also 55447. Just like Todd said beforehand, if you look at the puzzle input, you'll kind of see that the input strings, they're not very long. And
if you've never done Advent of Code, not everybody, but there's a lot of different inputs, and the odds that you and your friend will have the same input are pretty low.
Yeah.
So that's why Sebastian and I have different inputs from one another.
Very true. Let's see here. Apache says, is it more expensive than one round of looping? Most see, now that depends on your input, right? Like if you had an input that was super long, then probably it's faster to like look for the first like digit at like index 3, and then go from the back and look at index like 10 billion, rather than like that you take like 5 steps in total, approaching from 2 sides, rather than like going through 10 billion items in
but one direction. We can chase that down if you go into last.
Let me head into last.
And then I think he's talking about this, like reversing the indices. So is that that's a range, right? Operation. That's just a range. That's just a range reversal. That just flips the bits on it.
Yeah. So you can literally see how the reversed range is constructed. Is it just if we take a look here, it starts at the last element, it moves towards the first element. And it just walks backwards, so that's pretty efficient.
Yeah. So you're not really reversing anything. You're just
Yeah.
traversing backwards. Yeah. Cool.
Very cool. I'm very interested here because someone's starting to talk about what about Windows 5 partial Windows equals 2. I think you're already on part 2, my friend.
You're in part 2. Stop skipping ahead.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but don't worry. I do like that question. We'll talk about that in a second. Andy asks, where do we get the problem and the test input? So you get all of that by just heading over to adventofcode.com, signing in with an authentication provider of your choice. I think I use GitHub, and then just clicking through on the calendar. It's all the way at the bottom. First day, and other ones will pop up after that.
What do you think the calendar is going to look like at the end? Do you want to go on record on day one with a prediction? Because it looks like a trebuchet.
Well, okay, so here's a trebuchet.
Maybe.
And there has to be like I'm thinking like a night sky type thing with like
we're being sent to the sky, so there's got to be some kind of sky thing, and then maybe over on the end there's some kind of something.
I'm thinking like maybe like some galaxies or like an elf space station or something like that. Obviously clouds, since that's what we're working on. So I'm hoping that at the end it'll build up something with snow.
These calendars are usually pretty cool. If you've solved them, you can go back and look through the previous years. They're usually pretty cool.
Yeah.
More effort than I'm capable of putting into the art.
Oh, for sure. Easily. Maya says it already looks like the sky. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good on day one. I can pull this off, but I think beyond day one, it's stressing my artistic abilities a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's just a very dark sky. I mean, it's minimalist right now. I
love this like 1980s bulletin board system look that Advent of Code has, because that's how I grew up. That was my first online experience, was running my own bulletin board system, and this is what it looked like. So
it's cool. really delightful. I also like all the little gimmicks, like the fact that the number up here switches, or the fact that if I click a couple of times here, let's see if I can hit it. This is the power of randomness. Okay, well, I'll just click the button then. We are also sponsoring this event, so we're supporting Advent of Code. I'm also personally supporting Advent of Code as an AOC++ supporter. So if you do want to help out Advent of Code, make sure you also get yourself that little tag for a little donation. But yeah, we're of course really excited to be.
Every year I screw that up. I go to the previous year. And so if you go to 2022 and say, yes, I want to sponsor, it sponsors you at 2022.
Oh.
And every year I forget that this is the thing. And every year I've got to, can you please move this to the next year? Thank you. It's like the lamest thing. It's like my interaction with Eric Wassel, the guy who runs this. So like every year I've screwed this up, like not intentionally either. So I can remember this next year.
Okay, so I think people are itching to hear what's going on in the next part. So let's have another look here. Part 2. Your calculation isn't quite right. It looks like some of the digits are actually spelled out with letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 also count as valid digits. Equipped with this new information, you now need to find the real first and last digit on each line. For example, 219, so that one would be the 2 because that's that word, and 9 would be the last word. 829 would be 8. That was actually, so this is 823. So while there is 8, 2, and 3, of course we're just interested in 8 and 3. ABC 1, 2, 3. So that's 1 and 3 because you're only looking at the words. Again, we can probably just take a look here. This should be 2, and then the last one should be 4. This one is an actual digit, so you would be picking 4 and 2. That's the 42 down here, and so on. So in this example, adding all of these together produces the value 281. So the question is, what is the sum of all the calibration values? So what was your feeling when you read this bit?
I originally thought I was just going to do window. Like you already said, somebody in the chat mentioned window. So I was thinking of maybe I'll just use that. And then I realized that was, at least from my thinking, that was close, but not exactly what I wanted.
So that idea, just I mean,
just to slide a window along
yeah.
the text and convert as I go.
Okay. And I think this is also so the reason why, not even joking from beforehand, mentioned the length of 5 is so that you could cover the longest words in this.
And then the minimum, like, so yes, I mean, and that's what I had started with, and then I realized the typing wouldn't work out for what I wanted to do. It's a valid solution. I mean, it's eventually what it's very close to what I ended up doing. I just did it manually, basically. So I did it with substrings instead of, and you'll see it in a second. But that's the solution that I wanted to go with because it made the most sense to me. I guess you could have done a regex, or my friend Andrew did something pretty clever and replaced strings of the word like to, and instead of TWO, it's T and then the number 2 and then O. So that way it all lines up, and that's like more clever than I could come up with because my friend Andrew is really smart. So
we'll have to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah,
but yeah,
there's a lot of ways to come at it. So I just went with that one.
I have to tell you, I was a little stumped. Like this was the part where a couple of people,
and you still beat Roman at this. That's some good work there, man. I'm impressed.
That's I blame the breakfast buffet on his part.
Well, now you can come up with an even lamer excuse if he somehow like if somehow he gets ahead of you, like you can come up with some lame excuse too.
On the off chance, on
the off chance that it happens.
Alarm didn't go off. Dog ate my
lame excuse, like breakfast in the hotel. Come on, nobody's gonna believe that.
Okay. But honestly, for a second, because I was like, okay, seems easy enough, and then I switched over to IntelliJ, and I was like, hold on, like how would I actually approach this? Because I'll be honest with you, I was kind of in this mindset. It was like day one, right? I'm like, day one is gonna be like a 4-line solution, like max. Like I'm not gonna have to like write out any data structures or anything like that. It'll be like a quick little loop. And I was like, well, but how would I actually do it? So yeah, let's the
overlapping thing is what gets you, right? I mean, if these numbers didn't overlap, this would be trivial, and we could just replace them.
You could just replace them, yeah, exactly. But it ain't so easy, unfortunately. That is
maybe there is a regex way to do it. I'm not so great at those off the top of my head at 7 a.m. that I can do those.
Yeah, I mean, if you're if you're probably checking out the subreddit, that's one of my favorite places to go in December. I think there's usually people who solve these like in regex, like just all of them, where I'm like, I did not realize that was possible. There's also people who solve them in Excel and the like. Which
the Excel one just blows my mind. Every year there's somebody who does it in something increasingly wacky, and I just like that's the one that really just made me think that I'm probably not very much of a programmer. If it just like that's crazy and amazing at the same time. Just the Excel one, I think 2 or 3 years ago was just like some of these puzzles are really difficult. Doing it in Excel was was impressive.
Yeah. By the way, if you are a part of the wonderful Advent of Code community and you're doing this using some kind of wacky way, or I don't know, you're building cool visualizations or something else that you would like shouted out on the stream, make sure you have this kind of stuff and you post it into the Advent of Code channel on Kotlin Lang, and because I'm checking in there before each stream, and also just in the mornings after I'm done. So make sure you put it in there. You can also just DM me directly if you want something shown on screen. We've had wonderful visualizations last year, and I'm hoping people will be inspired this year again as well.
That's a skill I don't have, but I wish I did, because some of them are really, really, really interesting. So I always like looking at those.
Okay, so with that, let's talk about your solution for part 2 here. I'll let you take control again.
Because I'm not really blogging through these this year, I decided I'd put comments in. So I can do code with me, can I? All right. So same kind of approach. We're going to do an input sum of, and we're going to do some kind of calibration value calculation. But again, because of the way the puzzle works for part 2, you've got to do this changing out the words for something else. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of doing a windowed thing. And if you look at the string, and you go along it character by character from the left to the right, you're going to run into one of three things, right? You're going to run into a character that's already a digit, and I don't have to do anything special in that case. I can just take it. So I don't have to care. I can run into a character that doesn't start a word that represents a digit, in which case I don't need it because it's completely irrelevant to the calculation. Or I run into a character that does start a word and is a word, and then I need to turn that into a digit. So keeping that in mind, what I did was for each row of input, I'm running through that logic that I just explained for every character, and throwing away anything that's inconsequential, so null. So just if it doesn't turn into a number, I don't need it. So it's a null. So the first case is pretty simple. It's just is this a digit? Then just keep that character. And so I should back up. I'm using the indexed version of map not null. So map index not null, which is another really interesting Kotlin standard library function. So I get the index, and then I'm just doing C for character. I figured people could follow that. I try to give everything a sensible name for these, but in this, I figured C was good enough. So if it's a digit, then great, we're done. We don't need any more processing on that. Otherwise, if it's not a digit, then it might be a word. So what we want to do is we can go down here to my handy helper function, and this is where the windowing thing we were just talking about comes into play. So it's this could have just been a regular function. I did it as an extension function on string, just for fun. So I could say, given this row of input, find me any possible words that start at this index here. So whatever, index 1 or 0, whatever it is, and then slide a window along that and see if I can find a word. And now that I'm looking at this, I could probably have done this differently and a little bit more efficient. But at any rate, I'm got a range from 3 to 5. So why 3 to 5? Because those are the shortest word I can have is 3 digits long, and the longest word I can look for, I think it's 8, is 5 digits long. So I don't need to look, at 1 or 2. I can, or anything beyond 5. I don't particularly care. And so what I do is I take that substring of the starting point, and then however many till the end of the string. So this is probably a little bit more complicated than I like, but substring in Kotlin and in Java and a lot of other languages will fail if you give it a substring from, off the end of the string. So I can't say, give me the 10th place give me a substring that goes out to 10 on a string that's only 9 characters long. So this whole thing is, getting the start at and then adding the length. And then I love this function in the Kotlin standard library, course at most length. So what it basically says is calculate the point that the substring should end, but don't let it get beyond the length of the string. So I love course at most. There's a corresponding course at least, so you can bring a negative number, a low number up if it's too low.
I really like that these aren't called like CO floor or like have these kind of names, because this just reads very like naturally.
Yeah,
or it's not clamp. Yeah, that's actually
some of those things are like pretty, language designery, or if you're into like functional programming, they have a history, or if you're really into math. I'm not a math guy either. I was pretty terrible at math, proving that you can have a career as a successful programmer without being good at math. But this makes sense to me. Like, make it at most this.
Yeah.
So anyway, what we come back with is all the possible words that could be. Take the next, 3 to 5 characters and just go grab them all for me. And then, so I've got that there, and then calling my absolute favorite function, the Kotlin standard library. And I'm so happy I got to use it the first day out, is first not null of or null. And if you don't speak Kotlin standard libraryese, it is the first not null of this function here. And if nothing is not null, then return null. Otherwise, the first not null of variant of this will throw an exception if it doesn't find something that's not null. So you have to use this wonderfully named thing. And I'm not kidding. This is my favorite function because the name is just like, again, it's really descriptive, but it looks crazy when you look at it. So anyway, we go through all of the words that we just generated and we just pull it out of this map. And so I should have showed you that up here. We've got a map of string to int. It could have been string to character as well. I just didn't like the coloring that it gave me when I did characters, so I just left it as int. So, obviously the words go to their corresponding actual digits. So if words dot, ONE is in there, it'll return me a 1. And if it's not in there at all, if it's like some completely other different string, I'll get a null. And that's why I'll throw away nulls here, and then I'll throw away nulls here. I'll eventually end up with a list of characters that are digits only. And then in my case, I'm joining them to the string and just calling the same thing I did in part 1. We could just do the same thing here. We could just pick out the first and the last one from that list and multiply the first one by 10 and add them together. That would get the same thing, but I just felt like reusing the part 1 again because I'm not super concerned with performance here. So that's how I ended up solving it. It's kind of like that windowed thing. I originally had thought to write this as windowed, but I didn't want this to be returned as like list of character. I wanted strings in here, and I guess I could have just mapped it over there, but I just didn't. So, but you could use windowed, I guess.
But I really like what I like about this approach is that it takes, like, essentially, rather than change the algorithm, it just rephrases the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like essentially, it's just like let's assume our content is slightly different, like the stuff that we're operating on, the data. So
you're taking advantage of the fact that like Advent of Code's input is always going to be correctly specified. I mean, it might not be fully specified. I think in this case, a lot of the gripes were that people didn't like the edge cases weren't documented in the provided test that he gives you, which is, like newsflash, they're not always going to be. So you've kind of got to get used to that for Advent of Code. But the thing that I do like about writing Advent of Code solutions is I can kind of throw that part of my thinking away of like, okay, I got to handle all these edge conditions that in the real world I would need to handle, but in this case I don't particularly need to handle them because the input doesn't have any bugs in it.
That's the nice part. So first of all, I'm not sure. I'm sure we have a moderator in the in this YouTube channel, but because I just read a very interesting message which said I'm gonna pull this one up on stream. That's what you're gonna get for this. Now hold on, where is it?
This is the benefit of writing good comments. What?
You said of course they don't use dark mode. First of all, what do you mean of course? I personally like using light mode because I feel that people with personally I find this a little easier to read, especially when I'm on like a smaller screen. But I'm very curious if we can run a survey or run like a little poll to see if people would prefer dark mode. Because I'll let you in on a secret here.
Now you're gonna do like what do you folks like, tabs or spaces or
like it's a matter of like 3 seconds for me to change this. It's not a matter of like my inability to do it. It's just I'm hoping that most people will be able to look at it this way.
So I use light mode because of the same thing. I find it easier to read, but I have also read a bunch of things that it's easier to present on screens and it's easier to like do this kind of thing if it's in light mode. I don't know. I have problems with the dark mode thing. When I have to pair with somebody in their dark mode, I'd have trouble reading it. But
I'm seeing a lot of messages here. Stirring
the pot here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, I'm seeing Vim versus Emacs.
Yeah, exactly. We could do that one too.
That one's an easy choice.
We all know the obvious answer to that one, so
it's IntelliJ IDEA. Light theme with light header, light mode for the win. Please keep it light. When I code myself, I do dark. For screencast, I find light mode good. Okay, very good. So I do hope that maybe Xenia, if you are in the background, maybe you can run a poll. But I have a bit of a feeling here that the light mode might actually win out on this. Thank you so much for everyone who weighed in. Okay, so with this, we can of course like run your solution, and we'll get an output, which
hopefully is correct.
let's have a quick look here. 54706. That is correct. Wonderful. So now I want to walk you through what happened for me this morning. Someone says, when I want to go to sleep, I use dark mode, which is good because I'm very like, while this is a cozy place, I don't want you going to sleep. Let me make sure that I'll. I do hope. You know what? Give me 2 seconds here. I'll see if I can run this poll because I think I might be logged into that account. Now it's just a matter.
You gotta know the answer.
You know, yeah, I kind of feel like I do. So we'll engage with my audience. Start a poll.
Are you gonna do a poll every day? Are you gonna do a different poll every day?
Depends on the outcome.
A more and more like, what's your favorite programmer font? Like, there's like every day just one more and more divisive programming.
We'll do a little. What is it, like sun with face? We'll see if that works.
Like a check mark, and then like for dark mode, a red, an angry red X.
And we'll have moon with face.
Oh, that's good.
There we go, and we'll run this poll, and we'll see how it goes. We'll check back in on this after I've discussed my first variation, because I wanna take you through. I want to take you through what I've got going here. Oh my god, this is not the outcome I expected.
Yeah, dark mode's totally gonna win. Everybody loves dark mode. We're
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe we'll alternate. We'll see how it goes.
I mean, the good thing is, like realistically, software switches back and forth for a reason.
Yeah.
They don't ship one way anymore. So if you know, I've worked with people who have had eye problems that had to run it in dark mode. So I appreciate that it goes back and forth, and you can pick your own. But
so we'll check things.
I'm with you.
No, I mean, if most people here would like to have dark mode, we'll move into dark mode for a bit. I don't see why not. Okay, so let me tell you like kind of what went on in my approach here.
Okay.
So I kind of began it. I was like, I just gotta like bang this out like real quick. I gotta get something going. So it's like, okay, what do I need? Like I need to find either words, or I need to find digits, right? So we can ignore the part that's about like start from, because I essentially was just like, well, we'll start by finding the first digit or digit word, and then once I have that, it's just a matter of like running across it like the other way.
Oh,
like,
so you're coming at it from both ends and just trying to find a word or a digit and then just exiting early.
That's right. And then essentially you just like, so I do have two different types of indices, but for now we can just say these are just the regular indices, like if we start from the left for the first digit. And I'll also like unfold this here, because I wanted to essentially have a very, very similar structure as up top, where I just say I'll take a look at the line, I'll get the number, or I'll get a number for the reversed list. For the reversed line. So we start with the indices. And then essentially what I just do is I use my digit to int or null function, which that one's just like regular from a character, but I just use the null ability and I say, hey, look, if this is already a number, I don't need to do anything, right? So I can just return that immediately. I have found a number for the direction that I've been searching from. If I otherwise, I'll have to look for a word. So I'll just see, I'll take a look at like all my words that I have in my list, which are just these. We don't need this part in here. It's just the actual words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we'll see if any of those, like if at the current position that we've moved to, that means that we currently have the prefix of that word. If that is the case, we can translate the word into a number. And we do that by just using the index, because it's 0 index, right? So 0, 1, 2. Oh, yeah. If we have +1, it's just 1, 2, 3.
That's why I used a map, so I wouldn't have to do that. Jumping around with the math like that.
I would not want to have this in regular code, obviously.
Solves the puzzle.
Yeah. And and then at the end, so you get this number, but I do have just two different ways of approaching it. So either approaching it from the last index or from the first index. And I just realized that this reversed is extraneous. So don't be confused about that part. That was just me copy pasting from a different place because I did split this up into individual parts. And this, hopefully, when you run this, it should give you a number not unlike the number that you had. That looks pretty good to me.
Yay.
And then I was like, okay, great, submitted. Beat Roman to it.
The important part. Right.
Yeah.
It's a very important part of the day here.
That's right. I was like, this is great. Now I can sit down and I can
December
do a little
1st, 2023. It finally happened.
Of course. Yeah. And now I'll I'll yield to people for this one, and I'll show you one of my favorite dark themes. This is dark purple. I do enjoy this a lot. I am also a dark theme enjoyer at times. Don't worry.
It is more readable than the standard dark, I think. At least for me, it is.
I do like this one quite a lot. If you're a dark theme enjoyer, put a fun emoji or something in the chat, please.
I just read something like Borland Turbo Pascal is 40 years old today, which makes me feel incredibly old because I think that was the first IDE I got. But that had like a nice blue and yellow thing going. We should find that theme and dig it up.
Oh yeah,
you want divisive opinions on themes? Get the Borland Turbo Pascal theme from
the Windows 95 hot dog theme. I think was also a good one.
Yeah, bright red and yellow one.
A lot of good ones. Yeah. So I thought, well, maybe I can like slightly refactor this a little bit, and we'll see what this looks like. And I went kind of overboard with this one.
Oh, wow,
because the problem is I really tried to avoid code duplication, and and I think that actually bit me here. Like, genuinely, I don't think this is really good code, because the problem is, so we do have these lovely functions in the standard library called find any off and find last any off. These are
cool.
Yeah, these are great functions, because what you can do is you can give it a line. You can tell it to find any of these words, and what you get back from it is a pair. Well, it's a nullable pair, but it's a pair, and it's the start index of the word that you may have found and the actual word that you have found, which is.
Well, I wish I'd realized that was there. That would
Yeah,
have made mine a lot easier. I wouldn't have had to do the window thing.
It's very elegant. The only part that's a little tricky and makes this a little more verbose and scary looking is that the return type is nullable, because you might not find anything. So that means you can't do nice like destructuring syntax as you can do in Kotlin with the like parentheses without providing some kind of default value. Like, if you don't provide a default value, it'll just tell you, I don't know what to put into these two variables.
Or using the hold my beer operator, you could force it. If you know better than the machine, you could.
I suppose you could. But I wasn't. But I'm not sure if it's actually. The problem is, since I'm looking for words, I might actually just have a string of numbers, right? Where maybe no word exists. That is a valid input case.
Conceivably possible. Sounds like something they do in Advent of Code.
So this is why you get this kind of tricky situation where you're like, okay, I know that what I'm looking for is the first one, so I'll just put the maximum possible value at the very end, and I'll put some kind of string
for the opposite from when
exactly, and then for the last one you do the opposite.
That's clever.
And you do that both for words, and you also do that for the digits. And your digits in this case, you can just create a very quick list using the very cool uppercase list constructor function, which, if I put a new line in here, you'll see that it just takes it, which is an integer. It allows you to initialize each element of your list with the index given. So in my case, because I just want to do like 0 through 9, those are my digits, I can just create a list just like that. So again, the thing that bit me here 100% is the fact that I tried to squeeze beginning and end into the same function. Otherwise, this would be probably quite okay. Like, you wouldn't have to do all these like switch statements. But yeah. And then the question that I still had to ask myself is, because I now, with this, I know the first word that appears, and I know the first digit that appears. So I still need to distinguish should I pick the word or should I pick the digit?
Yeah, you got to figure it out. You need to
Exactly.
compare indices and figure out which one's better.
So you just figure out which one comes first, or if you're running around from the other side, which one comes last. If you've decided that you want to pick the digit, you turn that digit to an integer. Otherwise, you turn your word, that digit word, into an integer, and you use that one. And you can just do that by doing a tiny bit of math again. You just take the word list with the index of your of the word that you're choosing. So if it says 3, that's going to give you index 2, and then you'll have then you'll add 1 again, so 3 becomes 3 again. Couldn't your list of words just have included 1, 2, 3? Maybe? That's a good question.
What was the question? I didn't follow
that. The question was, couldn't your list of words just have included 1, 2, and 3? Yeah, just put digits and words in the same list. Wow, look at that. That's a clever approach.
That's genius right there. That's clever.
That's what happens when you write code before your first coffee. It's a lot of. By the way, thank you so much for everyone who's so engaged with.
Catch. I like that.
Yeah, thanks for everyone who's so engaged with the code. Really appreciate it. But don't worry, I'm also not done yet. I do have one other version of this, which looks.
The thing is, so this isn't something I probably would have written, but it's really clear. It's clear what you're doing. I think that's good enough, right? I mean,
yeah, I'll be honest with you. I looked at it, and what I kind of don't like about this is that the code seems very rectangular. There's a lot of very long lines, and this function is almost
looks repetitive.
Yeah, exactly. It looks a little enterprisey to my taste. So I did do another try. But then how do you turn the word into a number? That's actually a good point. You could probably just do a bunch of offset magic math. I mean, you could figure this function out even with if it was a joint list. It might not just be quite as nice. You could also just have a real map. Yeah. Great. Naif says we can't see anything. If that happens to be the case for anyone else, please let me know. So my third version of this is a little shorter. This one, so with this one, I essentially decided, I decided a real clever idea. Well, or shouldn't be tooting my own horn here, but I essentially took a page out of Todd's book, which was rephrase the problem. And rephrasing the problem in this case is, well, instead of having all this boilerplate code to be able to run through my list from one direction and the other direction, why don't I just reverse the whole line and then just run through it the same way again? That works great. This is quite literally the code we just saw, minus all the when statements. But we, of course, need to do a little bit of extra trickery to do this. I mean, the regular reverse for a function is fine, but you also need to reverse the words. So all the words you reverse, but thankfully in Kotlin, that's a matter of one line. You just map it, you reverse it.
Do it once and never think about it again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's clever.
And the rest of the code, it's exactly the same. I no longer need to be able to start from a certain direction. I'll just reverse all the inputs. My function obviously gets an extra parameter now because it is parameterized on the type of words. I can no longer just have that as a private or as a top level function. But it is I was pretty happy with this outcome because I think it demonstrates a couple of things. It demonstrates the power of find any off, and this time we didn't even need to find the last any off or any of last. We just need to use find any off. We have a very nice way of destructuring these things. We still make the decision of which ones we want to pick, but we no longer have to do all this weirdness.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Which is, I think, quite nice.
That's nice.
Yeah. Now, Todd, what you mentioned beforehand, and I think a couple of people are also bringing this up in the chat right now, is you said you had someone who replaced the words with letters. The words with digits. My bad.
Yeah. So the issue with just going and replacing all of the words with a number is that the words run into each other, right? So ONE, 823 is the one, right? So you can't just replace like EIGHT with 8 because then TWO wouldn't work out. And in this case, it wouldn't matter, but in another case, towards the end of the string, it might matter, right?
Yeah.
So what his solution is to replace the string with something that still keeps the connectors, like the beginning and the last characters, connect like on the screen, like in the string, but has the number embedded in the middle of it. So you can change that ONE to one O, so numeral 1E, like, and you just keep going and doing that. So 2 to 3, and then put, you could get rid of the H and the E in there. You can minimize that.
Sure.
If you want, and then 4 you can just replace with 4 because nothing connects with F and R.
Yeah, because
so
I think this is the important part as well here, right? It does take advantage of the fact that the connectors are kind of unique.
So you do that, and then you go run part 1 over again with the string with these replaced. And I thought that was really clever.
I also think that's a super clever approach.
So my friend Andrew did that one. And I think a couple of people on Reddit did that one too. So.
Yeah, no, it seems like a couple of people in chat also did.
Nice.
A lot of people here mentioning,
See, that's what I like about Advent, because you think, there's maybe 1 or 2 ways to solve this, and then there's there's like 50.
Yeah.
And it's always something I never would have thought of. So I like that stuff. I like these better than, having just gone through a job search. I don't particularly enjoy leak code problems. But I like these because these have, I don't know, these just feel more real to me. They're more fun.
Yeah, there's a certain excellence and charm with the advent of code ones for sure. Yeah. That's really delightful. Yeah. Jonathan says I did that in a naive way and messed up the connections. Yeah, I can believe that might easily happen. You're
on the right track though.
Yeah,
that's good.
Taking a challenge, and probably maybe even with that mistake, it's this kind of code, it just takes a lot of time to write out as well. Like this is not particularly fun code to write.
You can't just bang this idea out. I mean, but you still did it and beat Roman to the punch. So that's impressive.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you.
It must have been a big breakfast. What
it was actually before breakfast. But you mean?
I'm saying his excuse. His excuse at breakfast. Right. So
definitely buffet type situation. 100%. Yeah, awesome. And with that, I guess I suppose we can run this one again as well, and we'll see that it gives us the same outputs, which is delightful.
That's always good when that works out.
Yeah, it is really great. I did have a refactoring approach or two where the number I was like, oh, this is so nice, and then I ran it, and the output wasn't the same, and I was like, I'm getting to the red.
At least you know what the answer is when you get into this refactoring stage, because that putting this, especially for part 2, and you're like, my sample puzzle works, and I'm pretty sure I've written an algorithm that is correct, and my answer is like, it says it's too high or it's too low. It's like, that is just the most frustrating thing.
Yeah. Wonderful. Great. So I want to just to kind of like, I suppose this concludes kind of the formal part of this whole event, but yes, I do want to spend just a little bit of time just talking about the stuff that you've done for previous years, and I assume by now everyone's eyes have acclimated to nice dark themes, so I'm gonna
bright mode.
Oh, there you go. Do you have dark mode support on your?
No, not at all. This is like a old Hugo blog that I can barely understand the HTML generator on.
Just a quick. Now I have to do the flex. Hold on,
can you do it?
I do have dark mode on mine.
Cool. That's all right. Now I get it.
There's also just
something to work on. Okay,
also
fair
just
enough.
a template.
Fair enough. I'll figure it out.
But yes, which is great though, because everyone is awake again.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about your content.
I like how you assume we just put him to sleep, but okay.
Well, cool. Who knows? No, not us. The dark mode theme.
The dark mode. Okay, gotcha. Anyway, this is my blog, and you could see in the last 2 years I haven't really done any writing except for Advent of Code. But for the last, I guess maybe 5 or 6 years, I've done every day day of. I've done a blog of every puzzle, so I'll solve it and I'll write it up every year. I'm not committing to do it this year yet. So I've just switched jobs, and I'm not sure that I really have like doing that is a second job for me. It's like a really time consuming thing to write these up. So especially when you get to like day 16 and over, it's just some of these get really, really complicated. So the first couple are not that hard, but I don't want to commit to it this year with a new job and a bunch of personal stuff going on. So
understandable. Let's have a.
But I'll see. Maybe I will, and I'll commit to writing them up, but not day of. So. But yeah, it makes me think harder about what I'm actually solving, because if I have to explain it to somebody, I write different code than if I'm just going to check it in and move on.
Yeah, I mean that yeah. I'll be honest with you. I think probably if you go to my GitHub, you can if you look at some of my like older solutions, if there is no pressure to share it with other people, things can get quite sloppy quite quickly.
Well, there's a reason I don't have 2015 and 2016 on here. They were pretty sloppy. 2016 is my first year doing it in Kotlin, and those were not great. They solved the puzzle, but then the year before that I did it in Scala, which was also not great. But
I think this is the part that's very nice about Advent of Code, is it also gives you an excuse to do something new, to do something different, to be awkward with a new language, or just to.
If you're going to learn a language, it's a great way. Even just going back to 2015, you don't have to follow along this year. You can go back to 2015 and just start. I mean, there's hundreds of puzzles at this point. They're high quality puzzles with answers on the internet all over the place. If you want to start a new language, it's a great set to learn from. Yeah,
truly think that's also just I do like the difficulty ramp up is quite a good very
because some of these are incredibly challenging. I mean, a couple last year. So the 2020 I think was the one that, or 2019 was the one that I found really, really challenging, because I was doing a bunch of traveling and I was like, it just lined up on days that were really hard, and I had a really tough time with 2019.
Yeah. We have a couple of comments here.
Okay.
First of all, I hope Sebi saw the result of the poll. I'm not sure if maybe we did put you to sleep. It's already using dark mode, my friend. we're already in dark mode. So not
giving up. We haven't even let the poll close yet, and it's already over.
Yeah. So again, but now I just get to flashbang people with light theme on everything else. I think that's already great.
You can always count on me for Team Light Team. I just have a hard time reading the other one.
Yeah, and I think we might switch it around here. I'm very sorry to you folks who are working or who are watching this in while they want to go to sleep. I can suggest, if you would still like to tune in, and we are currently using light mode, try to see if your device has something called smart invert. Like, for example, my phone does have that, where you can turn bright mode into dark mode. I mean, we'll look a little demonic probably, but I mean, if that's I guess the price you have to pay for dark mode sometimes.
I like the setup on that. That was good.
It's it might be an approach. Yeah. Let's see here. What else did we have? Awake and Blinded, absolutely. Apache says, let's also showcase unique, funny solutions. If you do have specific solutions that you would like to see on the stream or that you want to shout out, share them with me before the stream, and I'm happy to take a look there. And again, my call out to you, if you are interested in having visualizations or any other creative things that you've done for Advent of Code showcased, please also reach out. I'm more than happy to show them off. Yeah. But I think that wraps it up for today. We've already it's not like we have a particularly tight time frame here, but I think that pretty much means if this were an hour, we would have gone over time.
And we were saying before, like, how are we going to fill an hour with this? Like,
there's just these things, it's just when you're in a cozy environment, everyone's having a good time.
I feel like the problems that are shorter are easier to scrutinize. That's like a PR, right? A smaller PR gets more attention than a longer PR. Same kind of vibe, right?
Here's by the way a good point actually that Not Even Joking brings up, and which we can also encourage other people. Are you aware that Eric the creator asks people not to commit input files?
I was not aware
Absolutely,
of
that is correct. The idea is of course that Eric runs Advent of Code and doesn't want all the solutions floating and out there, so that like who knows what people will do with it. There's only one real Advent of Code, and I hope it will stay this way. Andy says, can you explain, do we need to submit an answer at the website? So if this is your first time of doing Advent of Code, but we can walk through this again for just a final time. Once you've logged in, you can just click through on each day, and then you'll scroll to where you see the input field, which I don't have anymore because I already submitted my solution, and then you'll submit the solution specific to your puzzle input. So you solve the problem, put it there. It'll tell you afterwards you get 1 star or you get 2 stars after you've solved both of them, and then after that you can take a look at your like personal like leaderboards, or you could like check out the stats and see how many other people have solved.
Wow, look how many people are doing that. Wow.
Yes.
That's big.
Vitol says, wait, we're not supposed to commit input files to public repos? I thought the input files were different per user. They are, but I believe Eric just doesn't want...
There's some fixed set of them.
Yes,
right?
And I also I just think that since all of this is an Advent of Code service that he's providing, that he pours his time into, he does not want a bunch of just essentially all the things that they've spent a lot of time coming up with cool generators, just like floating out there in the ether. Yeah. But if you are a first time Advent of Code participant, then I do once again encourage you, take a look at our blog post, Tackle Advent of Code 2023 with Kotlin and win prizes. You can find that one on the Kotlin blog, and I can probably also just post it right from my streaming tool here. And we have a bunch of different things here, so I do want to shout this out again. If you're looking for other people who are doing Advent of Code, make sure you join the Kotlin Lang Slack. There is an Advent of Code channel in there where people discuss. They'll discuss every day. If you want interesting chats on, for example, we'll have a look here. We'll have people discussing the actual solutions. They'll post their solutions in the thread, so you can also get some inspiration.
And you don't have to worry about spoilers because people always post them in a thread. So every day gets a new thread. Yeah,
that's right. And you can just like hang out and have a good time there. If you do want to win a couple of prizes, we will pick randomly from our leaderboards. Please make sure that you join the leaderboard just by going through the leaderboard section on Advent of Code and picking one of those leaderboards. The first one's already full. You don't need to try that one. The other ones you can join. You don't have to be fast. We just would love for you to solve a couple of problems in Advent of Code, have a good time, and learn something new. And if you do need a couple of more resources, this is not the first time we've done Advent of Code in Kotlin. There are streams from last year that have already happened. There are videos where we explain a couple of the solutions in what we consider idiomatic Kotlin, and you're welcome to disagree in the comments. We also have the algorithmic challenges in Kotlin course, for example. And of course, if you're looking for a structure on how you want to lay out your sources and take and store your input while not actually checking it in, then you can also use our template. Now, I'm very curious, if I go into this template and we take a look at the git ignore, look at this. In our git ignore,
cool.
In the git ignore, actually any text files, any input text files are already ignored. So that's kind of useful.
That's helpful.
And if you want to be a little bit adventurous or maybe prepare for tomorrow, you could take a look at the Amper template. Who knows what we'll see and what we'll talk about tomorrow and what guest we'll have on. I'm sure it's going to be quite exciting. All of this, of course, also means you get to try and get a couple of prizes. Make sure you read this stuff semi-carefully and set up your repository so that we can find it, because if we can't find it, we can send you a prize in case that you win. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Todd.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks for having
on.
me.
It was a really delightful evening.
Yeah, it was fun.
Great time. And I think we've really kicked this off nicely.
Yeah, and we settled the light mode, dark mode debate. So
that's we did.
Important.
We'll see what kind of mode I'll feel like tomorrow. Maybe I'll ask my guest. Who knows? I hope that you will join us again tomorrow at the same time. We are running 12 of these live streams this year, with a bunch of different guests, so none of them is going to be like the previous one, not just because of the puzzle, but also because of all the surrounding discussions. I'll also see if I can find 12 different cups to drink from, so that maybe we can talk about this one. Today's cup, I'll see if we can do this here, was Caddy, which is my favorite HTTP server. So
we get the hat tomorrow?
Will there be a hat tomorrow? I think I'll have to. I think that's now my homework. Okay, wonderful. Then thank you so much, everybody who tuned in, and hope to see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.